Every match. Every single match. The same seat. Empty. Row 7, position 4. In the family section of every stadium Portugal played in during the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. The seats around it were always full. Ronaldo's mother in her usual place, his sisters, his children, the people who had always been there, who had always filled the stands with the specific warmth of a family that had given everything to make one person's dream possible and had shown up, tournament after tournament, to watch that dream unfold. But seat 7-4 was always empty. Before every match, the stewards would check it. An empty seat in a sold-out World Cup stadium is an anomaly, something to be investigated, a ticket potentially lost or a person potentially in distress. But the stewards had been told, quietly and directly, by a member of Ronaldo's personal team, that the seat was meant to be empty, that nobody was coming, that it should be left exactly as it was. And so it was left. And before every match, before the tunnel and the anthems and the noise and the performance of being Cristiano Ronaldo began, he would look up at that section of the stand and find that seat and hold it in his gaze for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds. Then he would look away and walk onto the pitch and become what the world needed him to be. Nobody on the broadcast caught it. Nobody in the press box wrote about it. For 3 matches it went completely unnoticed, a detail so small and so private that it existed beneath the threshold of the world's attention, protected by its own ordinariness. Until the 4th match, when a journalist with a long lens and the specific patience of someone who watches the things other people miss pointed her camera at the family section 20 minutes before kickoff and captured something she didn't immediately understand. An empty seat. And a man on. She didn't publish the photograph immediately. She sat with it for 3 days, trying to understand what she was looking at. And what she eventually learned, through sources she would never fully disclose, through conversations she would only partially report, through the patient accumulation of fragments that formed a picture she almost wished she hadn't seen, was something that nobody in the world of football had known, something that Ronaldo had carried in complete silence through the entirety of the tournament, through the training sessions and the press conferences and the matches, and the celebrations and the eliminations, something that explained the empty seat and the 3 seconds, and the expression that no broadcast camera had ever managed to capture before, because it was the expression of a man grieving in public in a way that the public could not see. But to understand the empty seat, you have to understand what happened 6 months before Qatar. You have to understand the phone call that Ronaldo received on a Tuesday afternoon in April 2022 in a hotel room in Manchester, 3 hours before a Premier League match that suddenly didn't matter at all. The call came from Madeira, from a number he recognized immediately, the landline of the house he had grown up in, the number that had been the same since before he was old enough to dial it himself, the number that existed in his memory not as a sequence of digits, but as a sound, the particular ring of a phone in a small house in Funchal that meant home was calling. His aunt answered when he picked up, which was the first signal that something was wrong. His aunt didn't call on that number. His mother called on that number. And the fact that it was his aunt's voice rather than his mother's voice meant that his mother was not in a position to call herself, which meant something had happened, which meant the next few seconds were going to contain something he was not prepared for. His aunt spoke carefully, slowly, in the specific cadence of someone who has been asked to deliver difficult news and is choosing every word with the awareness that words, once said, cannot be unsaid. She told him that his mother had been taken to hospital that morning. She told him it was her heart. She told him the doctors were cautious, but not yet alarmed. She told him that Dolores herself had insisted that he not be called until after the match that evening, that her exact words had been, "Don't tell him until after the game. He needs to focus." His aunt paused. Then she said, "But I thought you should know now." Ronaldo held the phone and said nothing for a moment. Outside the hotel window, Manchester was gray and wet and entirely indifferent to what was happening in a hotel room above it. He said, "How is she?" His aunt said, "She is asking for you." He said, "I'll be there tomorrow." He ended the call. He sat on the edge of the bed. He played the match that evening because that is what his mother would have wanted, because that is what he had always done with the unbearable things, converted them into fuel and taken them onto the pitch and run until the feeling either transformed or exhausted itself. He played.
He scored.
He pointed to the sky the way he always did. And nobody watching knew that the upward glance that night meant something different from what it usually meant. Not communication with his father, not the private ritual of grief already metabolized, but something more urgent and more frightened. A request. Please. Not yet. His mother recovered. The weeks that followed were difficult in ways that Dolores herself would not have wanted publicized. The hospital visits, the adjustments to her routine, the conversations with doctors that Ronaldo sat through with the concentrated attention of a man who is used to preparation and is applying every tool of preparation to a situation that preparation cannot fix. She recovered. She came home. She was strong in a way that Dolores Aveiro has always been strong. Not loudly, not with drama, but with the specific quiet durability of a woman who has survived everything life has placed in front of her by simply refusing to be defeated by it. By June, she was better. By August, she was insisting she was fine. By the time the World Cup squad was announced in October, she was already planning her trip to Qatar, already talking about the matches and the travel arrangements and which of Ronaldo's children would come with her. She did not go to Qatar. She made the decision herself, quietly, in September, without telling Ronaldo until it was already decided. Her doctors had advised against the travel, the heat, the distance, the physical demands of a tournament, the specific strain of sitting in a stadium for 90 minutes times however many matches Portugal could manage. She had listened to the doctors and she had thought about it, and she had made the decision that she always made when faced with a choice between what was comfortable and what was necessary. She chose what was necessary. She called Ronaldo and told him she wasn't coming and told him why and told him before he could say anything that she was fine and that she wasn't worried and that he should focus on the football. He said, "May," she said, "focus on the football, Deus." He said, "I'll call you after every match." She said, "I know you will." He said, "I want," she said. "I know what you want. I want it too. Now go and get it." He didn't say what he had been about to say, which was, "I want you there. I have always played better when you are there. I have always felt safer when I can look up and find your face in the crowd. Without you there, the stadium will be the loneliest place I have ever stood in." He said none of this. He said, "I love you." She said, "I love you too. Now stop worrying about me and worry about Morocco." Which was her way, always her way, of saying that she saw what he needed and was telling him where to put it. He hung up the phone and sat with the silence for a while. Then he called his team and gave them one instruction about the seating arrangements for Qatar that nobody questioned and nobody explained to anyone outside the immediate circle. Row 7, position 4, family section, every match. Leave it empty. The journalist who found the photograph sat with it for 3 days before she made any calls. She was good at her job, which meant she understood the difference between a story and a moment, and she was not yet certain which this was. She showed the photograph to 3 people she trusted, the empty seat, the man below, the expression, and all 3 of them said the same thing. "Don't publish this yet. Find out what it means first." She found out through channels that took 2 weeks and a certain amount of patience and the willingness to have conversations that went nowhere before they went somewhere. What she eventually learned, from a source she would describe only as someone who had been present, was this: the seat was for Dolores, that she hadn't come, that she was at home in Madeira watching on television, as she had always watched matches when she couldn't be present, with the focused and slightly anxious attention of a woman who loves someone on the pitch more than she has ever loved any result that the pitch could produce. And that before every match, Cristiano Ronaldo looked up at the seat that should have contained his mother and held it in his gaze for 3 seconds and said something, quietly, that no microphone was close enough to capture and no lip reader was positioned to translate. 3 seconds. The same every time. A private ritual performed in public, invisible to the millions watching because it was too small and too human to register on any broadcast. The journalist sat with all of this for another day. Then she made a decision that surprised the people who knew her professional reputation. She called her editor and said she was pulling the piece. Not spiking it entirely, keeping it, filing it, leaving it available for a future moment that might make it appropriate. But not now. Not during the tournament. Not while the man was still playing and the seat was still empty, and the mother was still at home in Madeira watching on a television, and the story was still happening to the people inside it. The editor pushed back. The photograph was extraordinary. The story was significant. The public had a right, the editor began. The journalist said, "Some things are more important than the public's right." She pulled the piece. It was Dolores herself. 6 weeks after the tournament ended, on her personal social media account, which she used rarely and carefully and with the specific dignity of a woman who understands that some things belong in public and some things belong in private, and that the line between them is something you draw yourself. She posted the photograph, the one the journalist had taken and filed and not published, with a caption in Portuguese that said, simply, "Every match. He always looked. I was always watching." The photograph showed the empty seat in row 7 and Ronaldo on the pitch below with his head turned upward, and the expression that no broadcast camera had caught, but which this long lens had preserved, the expression that had nothing to do with football, the expression of a son looking for his mother in a crowd and finding her absence and holding it for 3 seconds and then going back to being Cristiano Ronaldo. The post received 11 million likes in the first 24 hours. The comments were in 40 languages. Most of them were a single word or a variant of it, in whatever language the person writing it spoke. The word was love, or its equivalent, or something that meant the same thing in a register that exists below language, below translation, in the place where people recognize something true because they have felt it themselves, the specific human act of looking for someone you love in a crowd, and finding the space where they should be, and holding that space carefully and carrying it with you into whatever comes next. Ronaldo saw the post from his mother within minutes of it going up. He was in Riyadh by then, already deep into the Al Nassr chapter that had followed Qatar, already in the next version of his professional life. He looked at the photograph for a long time. At the empty seat. At the figure below it on the pitch. At the expression on that figure's face that he recognized from the inside. The specific quality of those 3 seconds, the private ritual, the looking and the finding of the absence, and the 3 words he had said under his breath before every match, the same 3 words every time, directed at an empty seat in row 7 position 4 in the family section of every stadium Portugal had played in during his last World Cup. He had never told anyone what the 3 words were. He had carried them the way he carried everything private, internally, without performance, in the part of himself that belonged only to him. But when he saw his mother's post and read her caption, he always looked, I was always watching. He picked up his phone and called her immediately, and when she answered, he said the 3 words out loud for the first time to the person they had always been directed at. She was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, the specific laugh of a mother who has known something for a long time and is waiting for the person she loves to catch up. "I know," she said. "I always knew." He said, "How?" She said, "Because I was watching, Deus. I was always watching. Even from Madeira. Even from the television. Even from the seat that was empty, I was in it. I was always in it." He closed his eyes. Outside his window, Riyadh was bright and hot and entirely indifferent to the conversation happening above it. He said, "I know." And he meant it in a way that he had not been able to mean it during the tournament, with the completeness of a man who has received confirmation of something he needed to believe, but could not quite reach alone. She had been there, in the empty seat, in all of them, every match, every upward glance, every 3 seconds of a private ritual performed in public. She had been there the whole time. He commented on his mother's post 4 hours after she published it. By that point, the post had 14 million likes, and the comment section had become something vast and ungovernable, a river of feeling in 40 languages that no algorithm could fully contain. His comment was in Portuguese. It was 3 words. The same 3 words he had said before every match in Qatar, directed at an empty seat in row 7. The same 3 words he had said on the phone to his mother when she answered. The same 3 words that the world now saw, pinned at the top of a comment section containing 400,000 responses, in the handwriting of the most famous footballer alive, simple and direct, and entirely unperformed. The translation from Portuguese is not quite perfect in English. Some things lose something in the crossing, but it is close enough. It said, "Always with me." 3 words. 11 million people had already liked the photograph. Within an hour of Ronaldo's comment, 3 million more people had liked it specifically because of those 3 words, because of what those 3 words did to the photograph, what they added to the empty seat and the upward glance, and the expression that no broadcast camera had caught, and the mother at home in Madeira watching on television, and all the distances that exist between people who love each other and cannot always be in the same place at the same time. Always with me. The seat was empty. She was always in it. And he had known it and she had known it, and for one tournament in Qatar they had both carried that knowledge in the specific and private way of people who are so completely connected that the physical distance between them is almost beside the point. Almost. Not entirely. Because he had still looked. Every match. 3 seconds. Because knowing someone is with you and being able to see them in a crowd are 2 different things, and Cristiano Ronaldo, who had spent 20 years learning to metabolize the unbearable into fuel, had not yet fully learned, had perhaps never fully learned, to stop looking for the faces of the people he loved in the crowds that gathered to watch him perform. And perhaps he never would. Perhaps that was the point. Perhaps the looking was itself the love. The daily, consistent, never-finished act of turning toward the people who mattered, even when they weren't there, even when the seat was empty, even when the only thing available was 3 seconds and 3 words and an upward glance in a stadium full of people who thought they were watching a footballer and were actually watching a sun. The seat was empty. It was always full. These 2 things are not contradictions, they are the same truth seen from different distances. From far away, row 7 position 4 in the family section of a World Cup stadium is an empty seat.
An anomaly.
A ticket gone and used. From close up, from the distance of 3 seconds and 3 words and a phone call from Madeira, and a social media post that 11 million people liked because they recognized in it something true about their own lives. It is the fullest seat in the stadium. It contains everything. A mother's love that crosses distances without diminishing. A son's need to look, even when looking finds only absence. The specific human faith that the people we carry with us are present in the carrying, whether or not they are present in the seat. Cristiano Ronaldo looked up before every match in Qatar and found an empty seat and said 3 words and walked onto the pitch and played. And his mother sat in Madeira and watched on television and was, as she has always been, exactly where she needed to be, with him. Always with him.